This is Jaws. The first summer blockbuster and one of Steven Spielberg's finest films, it plays on elemental fears and the politics of a small town ravaged by a terrifying force of nature. The impact of Jaws on culture has been profound. It cemented Spielberg's legacy as a master of suspense and entirely changed our conception of what could be lurking beneath. And this is James. He's never seen Jaws. We're going to have him watch it cold and knowing as little as possible about the film. We'll interview him after to get his unbiased take on the movie. We are Fear fans, and this is the Rookie Horror Picture Show. First question, how do you feel about horror movies?
Well, my family have, me personally and my family as well, we don't really have an experience in horror movies. These all movies I've seen that are horror have been with myself, but because my family don't really like horror that much, because it's the whole idea of why would you want adrenaline rush when you could go and play rugby or sports something, but I can understand how some people want to do it.
What horror movies have you seen?
Cloverfield technically. The Purge technically, it's a technical horror movie, even though the end is like a thriller, shooting each other. War of the Worlds technically, and Annabelle. I think that's about it.
What was the most recent horror movie you watched?
Oh, years ago. It had to be Annabelle, but I only watched bits of it because I was with a girl at the time. And so it's one of those things you just put in background. And I understand how, because I watched a lot of Brainiac. I don't know if you have Brainiac in the UK, in the US, but it's basically a show that talks about science behind everything. And it was talking about horror movies going on dates. And it releases serotonin. I think it's serotonin. And and that's the thing of fight or flight, and it shows between anger and love, and it's all the extreme emotions. So I understand how, if you're going on dates, it's best to have a whole movie.
What scares you?
I don't really do much that scares me, but I do get physically unnerved at heights, or that sort of thing. It's just I don't do much that actually scares me. So I don't really have the time for it because I'm usually working.
How do you feel about deep water?
Deep water?
Like in the ocean?
Oh, that is scary. That is one of the things that you just mentioned. It's just oh, yeah, that's a bad thing. That's a big no from me.
Why do you think some people are scared of the ocean?
Well, it's like how, have you guys read Harry Potter?
Yeah.
And it's the idea of, it's the same idea that Dumbledore had, which is two things scare people, death and the unknown. And because it's we've only seen 10% of the ocean, we still haven't figured everything out, and it's still the unknown. And people are like, oh, what's happening? And that's, I think, because when you look at, because I've read a lot of this sort of stuff and understand it's horror is one of the basic instincts of people. It's you got horror movies before you have action movies, and biggest movies of all, Jaws has action but also horror a lot. But yeah, it's all that unknown.
You mentioned Jaws. Have you ever seen it?
Bits of it, but I haven't fully watched it. So we have to watch bits for film studies to know oh, this is best to jump scare.
Well, that's what we're going to watch today.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Cool, man.
Which one? Jaws 1, 2, 3, or
19.
Ultimate Jaws?
Sharknado.
Sharknado.
We're going to watch the original Steven Spielberg 1975 Jaws. Cool.
Okay.
So,
What's that behind you?
Really shitty painting.
All right, so James, you just watched Jaws for the first time.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie? What was your overall impression?
It's a lot better than when you like watch summaries of it. They always go to like the big parts of the famous part. When you actually watch the little bits in between, it really makes it more develop, more deeper than you'll see if you were just watching the summary of it. But yeah, it was really, really good.
Cool. Yeah, glad you
Awesome,
liked it.
man. Yeah. What did you like about the movie?
It's got to be. I know it's a bit different, but it's the idea of there are no quote unquote bad people. I.e., the guy's like, oh, I want to keep the beaches open, yet saying you shouldn't really open it because there's no kids in there, type thing. Sort of like it's the idea of how it's like, oh, he wants to make money, but he doesn't want to harm people directly in a traumatizing way.
The characters overall are very well rounded throughout the film. You have Chief Brody, who does his best to protect the citizens of the town, but he's a little bit of a drunk. You have Mr. Hooper, who joins Chief Brody in trying to rid the township of a shark, but he's a trifle arrogant. And then you have Captain Quint, who volunteers to kill the shark, but only for a hefty price, which the townsfolk would have to pay.
And while Mayor Vaughn is kind of a dick because he endangered the people in the town early on in the movie, it's shown later on that he has a heart when it's revealed that his own children were there at the beach during one of the shark attacks. So none of the people in the film can be fully characterized as evil or villainous, despite their flaws. And this makes a clear distinction between them and the malicious force of nature that is the shark.
It gets a lot deeper when you like learn about the interactions between the three guys on the boat and their interaction with each other, how they got together and like saying, trying to outman each other.
Yeah.
And it's like the parts where they show you but don't tell you. So it's like when he's opening the book and you see one of the photos is a shark with like a gas canister in its mouth, and then it happens later near the end. But also the part where it's like shows in the same scene where it shows scars, but he doesn't come out and go, oh yeah, by the way, I've been bitten by a shark. He just sort of like slyly looks at it, so the character guys know, so the audience goes, oh, something's happened, but we're not sure. Something's happening because we're talking about scars. But he's not going to come out and go, this is my backstory. No, he goes, this is what happened.
Film, first and foremost, is a visual medium and uses many technical and storytelling elements to tell a convincing and compelling narrative. We were really happy that James picked up with Steven Spielberg's use of foreshadowing in the film, and how a specific shot, regardless of how simple it is or how much screen time it receives, can advance the plot of the story, can deepen our understanding of the characters, and provide critical background information that gives us more ideas as to what the history of these characters actually are.
Giving the audience something to ponder and discuss rather than giving it to them directly is something we've seen a lot of in recent cinema, from the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to recent horror films like The Beach House. Audiences these days can be quite clever, and directors who play to that by giving us just hints and suggestions about a character's backstory, for example, can more easily earn the respect of the audiences. And it's really cool to see such a feature in a film as old as Jaws.
What surprised you about the movie?
The cage part, because I didn't hear anything about that, and then it's like, oh, he's going into a cage. It's like, really? Is that a good thing to do at that time? It's like, I think that's also one of the scarier parts as well, because you're going not just into the unknown, but into the shark's territory, and it's sort of like, okay, why?
James was right and completely justified, we think, in asserting that the scariest scenes of the film are when the men are taken off with the safety of the shore. They're on the boat in far-off waters. Undoubtedly the scariest scenes of the film, because it's only when you're in the monster's lair, whether it be Medusa or the Pale Man, from Pan's Labyrinth, or there's countless other examples. It's when you're in the monster's domain that you really got to play your cards close to the chest and make sure you know what you're doing.
What do you think some of the themes of the movie might be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's generally because you saw, like, the whole thing of, well, not toxic, but over bravadoed masculinity, where it's like, let's go get it, let's get explosives, let's get all this stuff to get this shark, and it's like, yeah, that's a good option if you're going for lots of sharks. But when you're going after one massive shark, then you're best off just getting specialised group able to do it, sort of thing. So rather than just going all out, you only need one ship.
James brings up a really good point with this. There are barely any female characters in the film, at least any prominent ones, and the male characters shown, well, they're not the best examples of their sex. Now, is this just following along with the Hollywood trend of putting men in lead roles, particularly in action movies and thrillers, or could we view this as a critique, intentional or not, of male bravado?
What do you think the shark itself represents?
I just think it represents just, because you don't really, I mean, people who made it as well had this as well, it's just the unknown. It's like men can be blustering and carry out, and they probably won't find the unknown. But if a brave group of people go out and they can find the unknown, and it's a lot more dangerous than what that group would have, the big group would have expected, is the unknown. And that's partly, I think, because remember there was a factor of, because the shark mechanically didn't work that well, they had to use as little of it as possible. It's sort of the unknown.
Jaws adheres to an excellent principle in horror films. The less you see the evil threat, the scarier it is.
Even if it's by accident. The animatronic shark to which James refers broke down constantly during filming and hindered Spielberg's ability to reveal the shark more often. Nicknamed the Great White Turd, the shark doesn't fully appear in the film until the 1 hour and 21 minute mark. But the exclusion of the shark actually creates a lot more tension and anxiety.
Yeah.
We don't know where it is. We don't know its size, we don't know its dimensions, its appetite, and especially where it's going to attack next.
Why do you think Jaws was so successful, and why do you think it's had such a big impact on our culture?
Well, I think it's just why it's got a big impact on the culture, because I think it's because it's got some of those quotable lines, like "you need a bigger boat."
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
And I think it was famous because how rich it was. Not how rich it was, but it became famous because it was something different back then, wasn't it? It's something new. And I think that's, from what I understand, that's a lot of horror movie thing. It's sort of, it always tries finding the new thing.
Horror may not actively be pursuing something new, but it certainly capitalizes on fears of old, things that have permeated our society and culture for a long time. Do you think this story could really happen? Like a shark or some animal like this causing this much trouble?
Well, things like that have happened in the past with, like, when you refer to like squids, when they're attacking ships, or there's all those stories about Bermuda Triangle when they can just disappear. But there's a lot of, I mean, there was a story a couple of years ago, I can't remember where, but it showed a video of like the serpent in Iceland. It's like this massive serpent that goes through the water. And so there are lots of things in the sea that will get you, like the blue whale can hit ships. And it rarely happens, but it can happen.
Giant squid attacks are very rare. The serpent of Iceland was likely nothing more than some cloth or a net stuck on a branch, and attacks from blue whales, as far as I could find, have never happened, at least not on purpose, maybe accidents. But that doesn't take away from the truth that for centuries and beyond, people have been scared of the water, what lurks beneath, that fear of the unknown, and one of the greatest unknowns on Earth is what's below the surface of the water. And Jaws really capitalizes on that fear by giving us a creature partly distant and alien in its size and its malice, but also familiar in what we've seen in books and stories in museums and maybe even on the beach.
What did you think of the setting when the 3 men were aboard the Orca and in basically the ocean?
Yeah, well, I think that was a good way of bringing around the shark, because it also shows, I mean, when you look at going back, like if you go look at the beach scene, it's like, oh, it's one person and many people about, and so that doesn't really make as much impact as the boat scenes where it's all compact and then the shark comes, and that makes a bigger impact on the audience and the guys, because it shows how big and how terrifying. But it's also that confinement camaraderie, like Richie said, where they all get together and have fun and dance. And also I liked how they had the British song in there.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.
James, thank you very much for joining us and watching Jaws with us. We had an excellent time with you. Let's go swimming. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this video. If you liked it, hit like and subscribe down below.
And down below in the comments, please answer our question this week, which is, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you in the water? Ocean, lake, river, bathtub? Let us know down below. We are Fear Fans. Thank you for watching.